You are listening to the work of Mamoru Samuragachi, and maybe you've heard of him, maybe you haven't. But Samuragachi is, many hail him as the Japanese Beethoven. So he produces these genius symphonies, even through the limitations of deafness. And this is some of the work of Mamoru Samuragachi. And he's got an incredible story. He actually sees this hearing loss that he had early on in life not as a handicap, but really as a benefit. I came across a while ago an interview that he gave with Time magazine where he talks about his deafness and how this actually has created the character of his music. And in that interview, he says, if you trust your inner sense of sound, you create something that's truer. It's like communicating from the heart. And then he says, losing my hearing was a gift from God. And this sounds like a gift from God. But there's a hitch. Samuragachi did not write this music, or any of it. Someone who worked for him recently exposed him as a fraud. Samuragachi does not write music at all. He can't. And he's not even deaf. This week we're talking about life's work. We've been doing that for several weeks now in this learning series. And I know, I'm surprised too. And what we've said is during this series, we hope to, in a way, kind of unlock your vocation. Another way to say that is discover your calling, the thing that you are meant to do. Even within the things that you have to do, you and I have to do. And how are we doing that? Well, we are looking at 6 different callings that we feel God has actually placed on all of our lives. And these aren't 6 jobs. These are just 6 dimensions of who you are when you're working. 6 qualities of the working self. And the more that we actually lean into these 6 different qualities of the working self, the more, and I've experienced this in my own life, and so I can confidently say this is the benefit of it. If we really lean into these 6 different callings, these 6 qualities of working life, okay, it will cause us to thrive more where we work, wherever you work. It is going to cause us to be a better contribution in our field or on our team or in our families, if that's where your primary work is. And it will tee you up to make better decisions about the future of your career. It really will. Okay, so those are the benefits, and those are things that we all long for. Maybe you're in a place right now where you're like, I'm trying to explore whether or not my job actually lines up with my calling. Well, even though we can't solve that equation for any of us, really, during this series, instead we're going to talk about the character of a person, the approach to life of the kind of person who makes great decisions when they're at that crossroads, okay? This week, we are talking about the calling to be champions. You are called to be a champion. And when we think about champions, historically, we quickly come up with all kinds of people that we admire. And usually our champions that we really like are not the ones who just have excelled on the field or in a field. These are champions who have also exhibited some sort of like moral quality or resolve of character that makes them admirable, inspirational. You know, so people who kind of leverage the platform that their achievement gives them to make a real difference in other people's lives. And those are the kinds of people that we really like as our champions. Those are the people that we look up to and we admire. And we'd all agree, even if you're not from a faith background or you're kind of new to spaces like this, we'd all agree that the moral quality of people's lives is important in terms of how they influence in the world. Because we can all think of other examples of champions who have achieved great things, and then all of a sudden that influence that they could have had is somehow impaired or maybe even destroyed because something they've done has now come out into the light, right? We've got these champions that are actually just all-out frauds like Samuragachi. And then we've got other ones that are champions in their field, but now we're starting to question whether or not they should have any influence in society. A lot of us would grieve as we reflect on the predicament of Bill Cosby right now. And he's the most popular punchline we've got in broad media right now. And whatever is true about that situation, I think all of us would agree that there is something more important than creating a great sitcom, especially when we are tortured by the thought that Men like Bill Cosby may not be who we thought they were or who we'd hoped they were, right? And why is it? Why is it that these champions all of a sudden now will not be first remembered as champions, but as cheats and liars or maybe even villains? It's because they have risked that one thing that is your most valuable asset when it comes to making a difference in this world, and that is trust. If I trust you, I give you permission to influence me. We're not the first ones to think that, right? Aristotle talked about kind of the tripod of influence in the world, of logos and pathos and ethos, that you had to have great reasoning, logos, and you had to be able to conjure great emotion in people. And to Aristotle, the most important, you had to have character excellence. You see, we all know great leaders and great champions who are maybe brilliant or can lather up the emotions of their audience, but we'd agree now, because of some choices they've made or some things we found out about their profile, their resume, their track record, now the potential that they had to really make a long-term legacy difference in this world is now cut off because they lack that moral character. They can't be trusted, And a lot of us would think, well, listen, given the same circumstances, I wouldn't do the same thing. I wouldn't slip up. I wouldn't become a Lance Armstrong, That wouldn't happen to me. Well, what makes you so sure? How could we be so sure that given the same story, the same life, the same predicament, we wouldn't falter in that moment of truth? You see, I'd love to wave a magic wand and just say, have integrity. Wouldn't that be great? If integrity was like zapped on us, But it's not. We all know that integrity is just earned, gained, built up over time, just like trust. The strength to be able to make the right call even when it's tough, or even when we're all alone, or even when nobody else is doing it. That's hard, and that comes from somewhere. And I think that the major falls that we've seen, when lots of things have been lost and influence has been handicapped or destroyed, I don't think that came out of nowhere either. I would suspect, even though I don't know these people that we've talked about, that over time it was a series of little decisions that started to erode at their strength to be able to make the right call at the right time, right? I was a business major in college, and I still remember the study that I heard about back then. I got a business degree, and so I was studying the lives of some young professionals and trying to see, maybe that's the path my life is going to go on. And I remember the survey that a New York law firm did of these young professionals, these young financial professionals out there. And in that survey, it was discovered that a third of these people just getting started in the financial world, a third of them believed that they would probably have to make unethical or even illegal choices in the course of their career in order to succeed. Like it was par for the course. It was required. And the same number of people, about a third of those surveyed, also said that they absolutely would, without question, make an illegal choice if they were guaranteed a certain sum of money and guaranteed that nobody would ever find out. And what the survey concluded, one of the things it concluded was, the biggest problems in the world are typically made from decent people who just like to, every once in a while, enjoy the benefits of dishonesty. People who otherwise think they're good people, but when the stakes are high and the possible public embarrassment is reduced, we'd all potentially be making that wrong call. And I think that our resolve, our strength to be able to make that right call in the right time is impaired. I think it's eroded. So today we want to talk about what it would mean for us to be champions completely. Not just for us to be excellent in our field or on the field, but having this moral excellence, this character excellence. Because here's what I think champions understand, that all of us would believe and all of us want to experience. And this is really the big idea of the whole morning. Here's the big reveal right here at the top. Your integrity is your greatest influence. No matter how much success you achieve, no matter what the symptoms are of that success, you've got prominence, you've got a pocketbook, all of us would agree that ultimately your integrity is your greatest influence. And so where does that come from? And how would we know that when we're standing in those big moments of truth, when the stakes are high and a lot is on the line, we would be able to make the same choice that the best version of ourselves would make? How could we emerge victorious, champions in those moments? I learned a lot about where integrity comes from by looking at this little biography that's really familiar to all of us. It's a biography of a young man that was retained for us. This guy lived thousands of years ago, and his name is Joseph, the Jewish patriarch Joseph. And if you have a Bible, you can turn with me to Genesis chapter 39. And let me catch you up to speed. Again, a lot of this is going to be stuff that you've heard before. We know a lot about Joseph. We know about his Technicolor Dreamcoat. We know that Joseph was the favored son among many sons. He was seen as the miracle baby of the favorite wife of his dad, Jacob. Joseph had a lot going for him. But what you may not know is that his coat may not have been all that Technicolor. If you really look at the original language, we've spun it off into we thought that maybe that was what was so special, is that was this expensive coat with all these expensive dyes that made this multicolored thing. But the coat may not have had a lot of colors. What the coat actually symbolized, what the biographer wanted to imply, is that he was given authority. It was a uniform of management. And so here we have this young kid. He's like the second youngest son of a large family, and he's actually placed in authority over his other brothers who have to work the field. And if you remember, they don't like that so much. There was some tension there with Joseph, right? And on top of that, Joseph was convinced that God had given him this vision of him wanting to do incredible things through Joseph. Like Joseph was in for something amazing, and he didn't understand all of what it meant. There was like hay bowing down to hay and stars and moons and stuff. He's like, I don't know what all that means, but God has told me something incredible is going to happen in me. This is some big vision, some mark that God has put in front of me that I'm going to be able to experience. And he just wouldn't shut up about it. He kept telling his family, you remember that? And they loved that. They absolutely loved that Joseph, who couldn't bother himself to work up a callus in the field, also was one day going to be lording some sort of authority over them. All right, more than this. And so they did what any reasonable siblings would do what we would all do given the same set of circumstances. They sold him, which, is bad. But their first idea was to kill him. And so this was a slight reduction in the consequences. We'll sell him. They sell him to this traveling group of gypsies, and then they end up selling him again to this Egyptian political leader named Potiphar. And you know where this story is going. That's actually where we're going to focus most of our time in the next few minutes together. Some stuff that happened there in Potiphar's house. But before we get into that story, I just want us to put a bookmark here in what Joseph's life is like here as a late teen. He's probably like 17 years old, 18 years old. He was convinced, sure of it, that God had something incredible for him. He had some vision of like, God is going to do something amazing with me. I'm going to be influential. I'm going to be powerful. I'm going to have authority in this life, okay? And he had that set in front of him, and that actually makes sense of all the choices that Joseph makes that are recorded for us, that we're going to read about here. So then he gets into Potiphar's house, and in no time at all, Joseph begins to gain authority again. It's like it follows him wherever he goes. And if you will join me in chapter 39, verse 2, where we start to look at this story just with a little bit closer lens here. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, it says in verse 2, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. Now that detail right there shows you that he had a place of privilege, because not every slave got to live in the house of their master. But the part that I want to make sure that we understand is what the biographer is really trying to get across here. It says the Lord is with Joseph so that he prospered. And we'd be tempted to think, and we're still tempted to think all the time, that Joseph did good so he got good. Okay? Like the God of the Bible is the God of karma. And some of us still approach our lives that way. Like, I'm doing a good job. How come I'm not experiencing some reward for this in the here and now? That's not what they're trying to communicate here. In fact, they're trying to communicate something that I think is a lot more helpful for us. A lot more powerful, really, for you and I to consider. And it's this. The influence of God flows through the integrity of the man. The influence of God flows through the integrity of the man. And where do I get that idea? Well, look at what this guy defines prosper as. Verse 3. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. It's a place of privilege. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. Now, what would motivate a high-level foreign political leader to give this brand new young man, this young slave, this kind of authority? And it's really practical because it benefited his bottom line. What Potiphar produced, what he did, improved because Joseph was there. Verse 5, from the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. And I love this part, verse 6. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. I don't know anybody in my life that I would say this about. Like, I will put you in charge of my entire family, my business, my holdings, my influence, whatever. And if I put you in charge of it, it's as good as done, as far as I'm concerned. I trust you so much. In fact, you would probably do a better job than I would do if I give you the run of my life. The only thing I'll be concerned about is my cheeseburgers. That's it, okay? So here we have Potiphar giving this incredible authority to this brand new slave that he has. And I think Joseph earned this in moments that aren't even worth recording. I think Joseph, like maybe so many people that we trust in our lives, earned this choice by choice, minute by minute, truth by truth. See, I think it's in those small moments that Joseph realized the champion was really being born. When he had a chance to cut a corner or go the extra mile, Joseph went the extra mile. When he had a chance to spin to get himself out of trouble or tell the truth, Joseph told the truth. See, he realized, and a lot of people that we know, maybe you realize, that this equity of trust, this incredible asset that we all have, is built tiny brick by tiny brick by tiny brick. And over time, authority was granted to Joseph because he earned it. He was worthy of trust. Now, in addition to this, I don't want us to miss the fact that Joseph was just really good at what he did. Okay? There's no miracle in here. God decided to bless through the integrity of Joseph, but it's because Joseph was good at his job. Joseph had achieved champion status in, I suppose, management, administration, strategy. He was great at it. Or else Potiphar wouldn't have given him that kind of authority. Like, this makes my business better. In fact, I bet some people in this room, if I was to ask your team or your family, wherever your work is, about you, I bet a lot of them would say, you know what? They do a good job, but really, the real benefit is just them being here. The whole team improves. The whole work improves just because blank is on our team, is with us here. I think Potiphar would have said that about Joseph. So now here's where, really good, here's where progress gets a little awkward. The story takes a turn here. It gets steamy. The most awkward thing so far is the fact that I said steamy with that voice. And I'm sorry. Okay, verse 6. We all know this is coming. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. And for you screenwriters, that's called telegraphing. We know where this is going to go. Verse 7, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, as they do, come to bed with me. That's a tough moment right there. That's a big moment. Moment of truth. Verse 8, top of verse 8, his response, but he refused. Okay, now in the original language there, that word refused is just like an afterthought. Like there's really no meditating on this for Joseph. There was no, I don't know what I'm going to do. This was not a high-pressure moment for him. He just, no. The choice was simple. And it's not like this was the one moment where he had to make that call. She would not let up. Okay, let's jump forward a little bit down to verse 10. And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, hopefully none of us are ever in this kind of predicament, but every single day this woman was after this boy. Day after day, he refused. Same word again. He refused to go to bed with her, or check this out, or even be with her. And I love that detail there, because that is so unlike things I've been tempted to do in the past. Maybe for Joseph, it was easy to say no, the final no, because listen, everything would fall apart if he did that, and we all know that. In some ways, we could say, like, well, Joseph, that's not really that hard of a call, because what kind of an idiot would do that, would give in to this kind of temptation? I mean, surely you see the end game here. This will not go well for you. The thing I love about this story, what's retained for us, is that Joseph doesn't just say no. It says he refused to even be with her. Even in those small moments that he could have gotten away with, that nobody would have blamed him for. It's not like he enjoyed the flirtation. It's not like he stood around and enjoyed the attention. It's not like he spent time with her. It's not like he was mucking it up with her. He's just like, I know I'm not going to go all the way, but man, it sure feels good to be desired. And in my life right now, I just need a little bit of sweetness because the rest of it is hard. Who doesn't like feeling that, enjoying that a little bit? But Joseph says, no, I'm not even going to go anywhere near that. All of that's dangerous. I'm not going to touch it. Okay? And this is what separates a champion like Joseph from maybe other people that we've heard of before, is that even in those small moments, the choice was clear for him. It makes me think that, I don't think Joseph saw the world in terms of small and big moments. I think he just had moments. Or maybe they were all big moments for him, right? Maybe he realized that the champion was born right there at the crossroads between just a little and not at all. Maybe he realized that the champion was born right there at the crossroads between cutting a corner and going the extra mile. Maybe Joseph realized that a champion was born right there at the crossroads between getting out of trouble, covering my butt, and telling the truth. See, I think for Joseph, they were all big moments. I think it was all high stakes. And so I think he was prepared, regardless of the fallout, regardless of the circumstance, to make the right call. I think Joseph realized what a lot of us realize, that character is built brick by brick by brick, and he wasn't somebody that was going to try and find the loophole. I got to tell you, I'm great at searching for the loophole. I think religious people are great at looking for loopholes, right? I know God said this, but this exception, right? Because it's just convenient. It's comfortable. At the right time, a loophole is perfect. It is just what the doctor ordered. I know. Normally, I wouldn't do this, but, I mean, when's this going to happen again, right? I mean, who would blame me? Anybody would say yes, given this. Man, listen, you are smart people. So smart that you are great at deceiving. And maybe the easiest person for all of us to deceive is ourselves, right? We are so good at talking ourselves into things that we know we should talk ourselves out of and talking ourselves out of things that we should talk ourselves into, right? Joseph is a no excuses guy. And it didn't just give him the resolve to say yes when really the stakes were high. I also think it gave him peace of mind. I think Joseph was the kind of guy, regardless of the circumstance of life, was able to lay his head on the pillow at night, knowing that no matter what, he could stand on the strength of his character. There was no ghosts, no skeletons in his closet. Man, what would that feel like for you? Man, what a gift you could give yourself right there. If you could really, at the end of it all, no matter what's going on, no matter what other people are saying, say like, listen, I know what I've chosen. I've chosen victory over defeat. I've chosen strength over weakness. I've chosen right over wrong. See, Joseph realized that, I think, that equity of trust, that influence that really is possible for all of us, was built moment by moment, little by little. A little bit over time goes a long way, either way. I like looking at studies every so often, statistics. You'll hear me bring those up a lot. And I don't think statistics are the final word on them, but they're interesting, just as thought-provoking moments and ideas. And one study I came across this week really had me thinking. It was a study by a psychologist named Dan Ariely, and he does this massive study trying to figure out why people lie, cheat, and steal, okay? That's a huge idea. What motivates people who otherwise would make maybe a good choice to do this every so often. And so how he decides to go about this research is he goes to a college campus. I don't know why they always go to college campuses. I don't know about you. Maybe some of you are in college. I remember me in college, and if I was going to do like a morality study, I wouldn't first go to a college campus. I mean, for the rest of us in the world, we're like, that's not really a great representation of the rest of humanity. Because everybody was doing stuff they wouldn't want to do for the rest of their lives in college. But that's where he starts. And maybe one of the reasons is because this one involved money, and he knew that he'd get a lot of participants in college if he offers some money for this. So the way the study worked was this. He said, I'll administer a test to every willing participant. It's a math test. And you take the math test on your own, and for every correct answer you come up with, we'll give you $1. And of course, we won't give you $1 for any incorrect answer. So they all take the test in private. They make sure that the students know there's no cameras, nobody's watching you. Take this test, okay? And then after they complete the test, they say, now we're going to hand out the answer sheet. We want you to grade your test on your own. This is an honor system, all right? And so same thing, privately on their own, no cameras, no nothing. These students, they grade their test. And then after they grade the test, then they say, okay, now we want you to take that test and go to the back of the room and put that through the paper shredder. So they do that. Okay, now we're going to line up everybody. We want you to come up and you just tell us on your honor, and there's no trick, no cameras, no nothing. You tell us how many you got right and we'll pay you the money. Now what the students didn't know, which is why by the way, this is why you should never, ever, ever do a survey of any kind, a study of any kind. What they did not know is that the paper shredder did not work. It didn't shred papers. You put the paper through the shredder and it went into another room where the research team was there looking at your test and then comparing that with what you claimed about your test. And here's what they found out. They did this test with 30,000 college students. And they categorized people in terms of like no cheating at all, which is a very small number. Big cheaters, which people that claimed a whole lot more answers than they actually got right, and then small cheaters. Here's what was interesting to me. This is what stuck out. Very small number, no cheating at all. Very small number were big cheaters. Out of 30,000 people, 12 were big cheaters. We're all amazed too. Small cheaters, nearly 20,000 people said they got 2 more right than they did. 3 more right than they did for $1. So the big cheaters cost the study $150 total. The small cheaters cost the study $30,000 in total. And here's one of the things you could read from that. I wonder if some of the biggest challenges we're experiencing in the world, in our culture, are not actually as a result of the big cheaters, and there are some, but are actually as a result of those of us who believe we are good people, who like to enjoy the benefits of dishonesty every once in a while. See, I think your influence is most powerful through your integrity. And I think your integrity is built tiny brick by tiny brick, small choice by small choice. Sometimes when it's hard, sometimes when you're all alone, sometimes when nobody's looking. In fact, that's what I pray with my family every single day. I pray for my wife, myself, my kids. I say, God, I want you to cause us to do what is right, even when it's tough, even when we're the only ones doing it, and even when we're all alone. I pray that all the time. I think that Joseph looked at life and he said, listen, there are no big moments, no small moments. I think there's just moments. And maybe they're all big. Maybe the stakes are always high. And it created in this guy such an incredible moral character that listened to the result of his life. In verse 11, this is the wrap-up of the story here. One day he went into the house to attend, or not the sum total of his life, but just the sum total of his story, rather. Verse 11, one day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. So she caught him by his cloak and said, come to bed with me. But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. And the story goes on to say, and this may not be obvious when you first read it because we weren't the original audience, and so we may not pick up on some of the details that would have been super clear the first time this was published. But Potiphar comes back and she tells this story about how Joseph attempted to rape her. And she screamed. That's the only thing that saved her. And he ran out. And here's the cloak to prove it. He put her in this position. And he was victimizing her. Potiphar didn't even believe his own wife. He took Joseph's testimony. Actually, Joseph didn't even give a testimony, didn't have a chance. He believed it was impossible for Joseph to make that choice. And here's how we know that. If Potiphar believed that Joseph had attempted to rape his wife, there would have been no question he would have killed Joseph. That's how that would have played. But instead, Joseph gets put in a white-collar, enemy of the kingdom prison on Potiphar's property. And this isn't in the text, but you wonder if, like, Potiphar kept Joseph close just because he liked Joseph. So Joseph's prison sentence was about as cush as it could be. And for Potiphar, there's a lot of social pressure. He wasn't going to take the testimony of this slave over his wife. What would that have said of his legacy and of his family? And back then, that was even more important than it is for some of us now. See, some of us know people who don't even have to waste time defending themselves because we know them and they're worthy of trust. My wife, if you've met her, my wife is like one of those sensei-level moral character people. She is, you know. If you were to come to me this week and say, Joseph, we've launched this investigation about your wife because we have nothing better to do, and you know, we hate to tell you, but we've found that she's been living a double life, and we have receipts to prove it, and text message records and emails, and like we have this photo of her with like a hot guy playing the slots somewhere. I don't know. I mean, I'm telling you, I wouldn't think about that for a millisecond. I would like compliment you on your Photoshop skills, and then I'd let you be on your way. And that's a silly example. That's ridiculous. But if you were to tell me that my wife knowingly fudged on her taxes, or that Katie gave you the wrong reason why she was 5 minutes late to your party, I wouldn't believe you. You see, there are some people in our lives whose character is the only defense they need. I think Joseph was one of those people. I think for Joseph, there were no small moments. I think they were just big moments, and he lived the kind of life that is worthy of admiration. Now, it's okay for us to look at this and see, well, Joseph is this great example of somebody who I admire, whose kind of moral character I look up to, and man, I wish I was a little bit more like him. But there's more that we are meant to pick up on here, okay? And that's clear, and I'll show you that in just a second. But it is possible to look at Joseph and say, here's somebody else who's just, what a man of integrity, what a champion, what a hero, right? Just like, I don't know, Abraham Lincoln and Gandhi and maybe your grandma, you know? And it's good to look at people, admire them, and maybe take some cues from them, but there's more that we are meant to see here, and that is that it wasn't just that Joseph saw every opportunity, every crossroads as a big moment. I think that Joseph actually had the capacity to live above every moment, and it made the choices not easy, but simple for him, okay? And this is the force that I want to be able to give us today, just as I close in the next few minutes here. And here's where we pick up on this. The first time that he rebuffs her advances, way back in verse 8. Listen to what he says. This is fascinating to me. With me in charge, he tells Mrs. Potiphar, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he's entrusted to my care. No one's greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. Now, stop right there. What we expect Joseph to say in this next moment is, how could I do this to him? Right? And that would have been good. Or like, how could I lose that good thing? Like, how lucky am I to be in this position? That would be fine. You know, but he doesn't say that. Look at what he says. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? Not Potiphar, not you, not even myself, God. And that one sentence right there tells you everything you need to know about Joseph. See, Joseph had the capacity to live above the moment. Remember that vision that God gave him in the beginning? It wasn't crystal clear. It was kind of metaphorical. Joseph didn't totally understand how that was going to play out, but he knew God was capable of something big. That was the mark set before me, and I will not miss that mark for this moment. So it wasn't like Joseph was just able to say, listen, I don't want to do that right now. Joseph was able to say, I don't have to be the kind of person who does that. And what a powerful asset you can have in your soul to know that God is capable of so much more with your life than this moment would allow. But it was more than that. It was more than just missing the mark of what God was capable of. See, Joseph's bottom line to him was so clear. He knew one day he was actually going to give an account for the choices that he had made in his life. And some of you suspect that this is true. For Joseph, that was clear. He's like, I want to be able to stand before God and not just be embarrassed about choices that I made. I want to be able to stand before God, and I want to hear him say, you know, this life that we lived together, the story that we told together, there were some moments that did not make sense. There were moments of confusion, moments when it got really, really tough, but you trusted me. There were moments when good did not get you good, and you trusted me. There were moments when you thought this open door was going to lead to paradise, and it didn't, and you trusted me. There were moments when you thought this relationship was going to pan out, and it didn't, and you trusted me. Look what we were able to do together because you trusted me. You see, sin, literally, that word just means missing the mark. God has put a mark in front of Joseph, and he was able to live above the moment knowing, like, man, I would not risk that for anything. That idea of what God is capable of in my life is so thrilling. The possibility, the power, the difference that God could make through me in every circumstance, in my work even, is so, I salivate for that so much that this choice is easy. This choice is simple. No. I hope that you prosper in everything that you set out to do. I really do. I hope that we all achieve our career goals. I hope that you are great at what you accomplish. I hope that your kids turn out amazing. I hope you hope that my kids turn out amazing. We're doing our best, okay? I hope those things are true. But I really, really hope that we remember what true champions remember, because you are called to this. Your integrity is your greatest influence. No matter how prominent you get, no matter how deep your pocketbook ever becomes, your integrity is your greatest influence. And so this week, maybe you would join me in praying. Maybe you would ask God to do what only God can do. And listen, if you're not a God-believing person yet and you're just checking this stuff out, you're risking nothing by asking this. So maybe just try this experiment this week. Have conversations with God every single day that sounds something like this. And you can write it down if you want to, okay? God, cause me to do what's right as you define right, even when it's difficult, even when I'm alone, and even if I'm the only one doing it. I'll say it again. God, cause me to do what is right as you define right, even when it's difficult, even when I'm alone, and even if I'm the only one doing it. I'll say that again, but let me give you a few examples of what to look out for, because as you start having these conversations, those moments are going to become clear. I jotted down a few. If you're praying this prayer, you're going to come across with more clarity difficult moments. Moments when you want to get revenge, and let's face it, they probably deserve it, but you don't. You extend grace. Moments when you could spin the truth rather than tell the truth. And by the way, when you hit those moments, you should ask yourself, man, if I'm willing to lie about this small thing to save my butt, what am I not willing to lie about when it helps me? Moments when you're alone. Never before has it been easier for us to live lives in complete obscurity. Never before has it been easier for us to create an entire world where we get to do whatever we want, and no one, as far as we know, would ever pick up on it. So those moments when you are alone, the life that you live on your phone, maybe the little off the top that you can skim, and nobody would blame you for it or nobody would find out. Maybe there's the moments when nobody else is doing right. We're all going to face these moments this week, like moments when you could indulge excessively because everybody around you is. That's just the way that this is the way the party's going to go. Moments when maybe you could live just a little bit beyond your means once again. Or maybe those moments when you can gossip because that is the most fun anybody's having in this place. So maybe you would pray with me and then watch out for those moments. God, cause me to do what's right as you define right, even when it's difficult, even when I'm alone, and even when I'm the only one doing it. So if we want to make a huge impact wherever we work, build integrity. We are the champions, my friends. We are called by the champion himself, who for the joy set before him endured the cross so that he could make the biggest difference anybody has ever made in the history of the world, that he would bring brand new life to everybody who would trust him. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he could hear the sound of the Gestapo boots coming to take his life, and he wrote, "This century does not need more genius. This century does not need more strategists. This century needs simple, honest men and women." May we earn the right, the privilege to influence the people God loves this week by choosing in those moments what is right. Your integrity is your greatest influence. I want to pray for you. I want to sing about this great God who's done so much for us, and we get to hang out. Why don't you stand up? Lord God, thank you so much that you have loved us first. We need to remember that all the time because we're talking about doing the right thing. And God, I pray that we would never allow that lie to break into our brains that you're waiting to love us until we do the right thing. That's not true. You've loved us. We're going to screw up a lot this week, and you'll love us. The choices that we make can't even touch that bank account. You love us endlessly. But God, as a response to that love, without fear, in complete trust, may we choose more often than not, Lord, the choice of the champion, the choice of integrity. And God, may we in those little moments see them as opportunities to just build tiny brick by tiny brick the kind of resolve that chooses right when there's a lot on the line. God, may we become the type of women and men who make a big, big difference in this world because we are worthy of people's trust. It's invaluable. Build that in us by your Spirit. Make us true, make us honest, make us full of grace and mercy. We pray all of these things, all of this, Lord, only because of what Jesus has done. Amen.